So good afternoon and welcome to our last webinar for the calendar year. Today's topic is attracting and onboarding employees at the best places to work. We have some great learnings to share with you from the 2022 Best Places to Work. My name is Zrinka Lovrencic and I will be your host for today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we are gathering on today. WorkPlus is located in Sydney and we are sharing this presentation and recording it from Gadigal land. And we would like to pay our respects and extend that to the elders past, present and emerging of all the lands that you might be working from, learning from today and living from. To share you a little bit about WorkPlus and what we do, our organisation researches and accredits organisations. We predominantly look at employee engagement, what is making organisations great workplaces, what is making them not so great workplaces, and we help organisations stand out and be acknowledged for the great work that they do. And right on topic for today, attract more people into their organisations and stay ahead of the curve. Our products and services are designed to improve your employee engagement, increase their innovation capacity, improve the financial performance of your organisation, increase agility and speed, as well as improve brand awareness. As I mentioned, today's topic is attracting and onboarding employees at the best organisations. And today I have a great panel of speakers from the best companies. We have Hanna, who's the People and Culture Manager at Kapitol Group. Welcome, Alice. Jodette Cleary, the Chief People and Culture Officer at Hipages Group. Welcome, Jodette. Nikki Beaumont, Founder and CEO of Beaumont People. Thanks for joining us again, Jodette. And Nadia Lawrence, People and Culture Consultant at AC3. Thank you so much for offering us your time today. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about attracting candidates and what the best organisations are doing. We know the market's incredibly tight, and Nikki's going to share a little bit more information about that shortly. But you know, some of the organisations at the best are attracting hundreds of applicants into their organisation. They have a really strong brand in the market. And a lot of them are not household names and you know, banking on being a large MNC and therefore using that to attract organisations. So I wanted to share with you some principles that they employ and some strategies as well to help you think about what you could do differently at your organisation. One of the things that really stands out is that there is definitely a relationship not only with marketing and HR to build the community, but between HR and every employee to build a community of potential candidates to bring into the organisation. There's a few key things that organisations do. One of them is really having a great understanding of their current employees. You know, they profile their organisation, they know exactly who they have and what they are missing, which then helps them profile the candidates that they need for the potential roles. They understand their employee value proposition, and they do this very much so through conducting interviews and research and surveys with their employees to understand what it is that they offer that really stands out and connects to employee engagement and improves on it. They have their internal and external communication lined up to show the brand of their organisation, to display the values of their organisation, how they work on that. They have great websites that have a career page that showcase their organisation. They also supplement this with social media content, and we'll talk a little bit about the role social media is playing in attracting employees. And they also work with branded content that reinforces their HR brand, whether it's elements such as the Best Places to Work study or other certifications that they have a third-party endorsement that helps them stand out and be a household brand to potential employees looking. So where are they finding talent? We're finding that there are two main areas and a third sideline that they are looking at. Obviously, looking outwards, organisations are advertising. They're advertising on job boards, they're advertising on social media, advertising through university events, job fairs, and for instance, using QR codes at events and stores if they have retail outlets and so on. Looking inwards, one of the first places organisations look to advertise is internally and grow their talent. So it's incredibly important to have succession planning in place, employee referral programs in place, and looking at rehiring past employees. On average, at the best organisations, 50% of hires come through the internal referral program in place. We actually have one of the best places to work. 100% of their recruitment that happened over the last 12 months happened through a referral program. So that's why it's incredibly important to understand what it is that is keeping your employees around, to make sure that that they do want to contribute to it, not only being a great workplace, but to share that and bring new talent into your organisation. When companies are looking externally, as you know, the last couple of years have been incredibly tough in our market. Looking at global networks that your organisation has now, whether you're an MNC or part of a global association. And when organisations are hiring internationally, it tends to be from the UK or New Zealand because of the visa situation, and it's slightly easier to attract employees from those parts. Where are our best places to work advertising their job vacancies? So, apart from looking internally, as we spoke about, career planning, learning and development, really growing that internal pipeline, they're always advertising internally first. One, it'll be interesting for you to see who applies and to include that into your pipeline, into their training and development plans. They may not be the right candidate right now for that role, but at least you know that there is an interest there and they are interested in becoming that role, and you can help them succeed to that. Secondly, because when you advertise internally, this will enable your team to advertise through their network as well and bring people in through that referral network as well. We're finding that the average hire referral, and this is an average across all levels and all roles, but at the best organisations is about a $3,000 bonus. And at the moment, maybe your team isn't so much motivated by money, but they're definitely motivated by having a full team and finding extra bodies for the organisation. Externally, we're looking at LinkedIn job boards, so the classics, Seek, Glassdoor, university job boards. Companies are starting to advertise in areas such as pedestrian as well. Looking at social media, TikTok is on a rise for organisations for all sorts of things, and including attracting and hiring employees through Facebook automated chat as well. That has worked quite well for a lot of the organisations as well. Putting in QR codes if you are at job fairs or at university open days and so on. If you have a retail outlet, putting a QR code, you usually find those in stores and retail places. We're so used to using QR codes, it's become quite a well-used tool to source talent as well. And as I mentioned, social media is starting to play a huge role in building a community with your organisation. Videos are great for engagement, and especially through popularity such as Reels and TikTok. The audience engages with a video. This video content doesn't have to be polished and it doesn't have to be expensive. In fact, a lot of our clients are telling us that the more raw the footage is, the greater engagement they have with it. They're able to showcase what a day in the life looks like at the company. They're able to showcase what it actually will look like working on that particular job or in a particular role. The people you will be working with, you can already introduce them before the candidate even sits down for an interview. And it's a really great way for you to showcase your company culture, your company values, and start building a relationship with organisations. So to tell us a little bit about the current market that we are operating in at the moment and some of the restrictions we are facing, please help me welcome Nikki Beaumont, who is the founder and CEO of Beaumont People. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you very much, Zrinka. It's great to be here again.
Nikki, can you share a little bit about us with us? Just give us an overview of the current market for the labour force.
Yeah, thanks, Zrinka. Well, you've covered a lot of great stuff already, so thank you for sharing that and hearing those findings from all the information that you gather from all of the great places to work is fabulous, actually, and absolutely spot on with what we're seeing in the market. A couple of stats for you. Where unemployment's still very low in Australia. We're looking at about 3.4% at the moment, and I think these figures came from yourself, Zrinka, but about 470,000 open jobs at the moment. So there's a lot of opportunity out there, and there is still very much the war for talent that's been raging this year. Here at Beaumont, recruitment agency, we're in the thick of it. We see it all the time. This has by far been the busiest year that we've ever had. Traditionally, a recruitment consultant might work on 6 to 8 jobs at any one time. It's commonplace for them to be working on between 20 and 25 open jobs at the moment. So the war for talent is still raging, even though traditionally this is a time of year in Australia where we start to slow down. We start to think Christmas, the holidays are coming up. We're still as busy as ever. We've seen a slight softening of the job flow coming through. And this war for talent is across all industries. We deal with some specialist areas ourselves, like charities, not-for-profit, associations, education, information technology, etc. But of course, this is across many different industries that we're seeing the same war for talent. And what we're seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing and hearing it yourself, is to counteract that war, salaries have gone up quite significantly this year and continue to go up. We've certainly seen a lot of companies miss out on people because they've not acted quickly enough. So, it's the market of moving fast and acting quickly. But what we will get to in a moment is actually some of the other things that we can do to compete on this war for talent that we've got out there. So hopefully, absolutely everything that you're saying and what we're seeing is we're still very much in a candidate-driven, candidate-short market. That's what we're seeing and experiencing. We're finding it hard to fill the jobs ourselves, believe you me, and that's all we do all day.
Yeah, absolutely. There's roughly one role available for every unemployed Australian. However, it doesn't quite match up to the roles and the skills that we have available in the market and what we are seeking. And the 2 years of border closures most definitely didn't help. And something that we often hear from our sales teams is that time kills deals, and time is definitely killing deals with applicants at the moment. We'd love to see a comparison, and this is something you spoke about, Nikki, in our wellbeing webinar. We love to see a comparison between candidates, but unfortunately, that's not available to all of us at the moment. So if you do meet a candidate you do like and you do have a feeling that they are a good cultural fit and a good technical fit, don't give them an opportunity to speak to somebody else. Jump on the opportunity.
Yep, absolutely right, Zrinka, absolutely right. And there are still clients that say to us, well, we'd like to see more candidates, please. And and of course we do try and push back and say, if what you've got actually fits the bill, do seriously consider that, because going through the process to find more could actually mean that we lose the best that we've seen so far. But you know what? We've just been through exactly the same thing recruiting a COO for ourselves. We didn't end up with a huge shortlist, even though we had quite a big applicant attraction. So yeah.
Yeah. So given the fact that it is a candidate-driven market and we as organisations need to impress the candidates, what are some of the best practices you're seeing that organisations can do to make that great first impression on a candidate?
Yeah, look, absolutely. One of the key things at the moment, which we're seeing really makes a good first impression, which you've already referred to, is video content. Is utilizing videos in your attraction absolutely as much as possible, because it just gives people that much more information, a better feel about the organization, the role, the people involved, and it ticks more boxes in terms of what different people are looking for in trying to understand what a role might be about, or the type of company or the type of people that work in an organization. So absolutely. If you're not doing video content when you're hiring, definitely start with that. But in terms of first impressions, I mean, first impressions start from the very beginning, and first impressions may well be, you know, the quality of your advert if you are actually advertising, and how well it's written and what it actually says. Is it all about, you know, you read some adverts, still many that go, you know, here's a tick list of what we're looking for, and not necessarily well, this is what the role's about, this is what we're able to offer you. It's a very much a two-way street in this market. So, you know, first impressions go from that initial advert, the quality, what's said, what's shared, you know, through to your social media, you know, what's people's impressions of you when they just see of you, or maybe they come across you in their everyday, or have a look at your website. So all of that actually does count. But then, of course, the next element is the recruitment process itself. How easy is it to apply? You know, I think long gone are the days where we advertise roles to limit the amount of people that come through and shortlist through advertising. We're actually advertising to really open up the people that are interested. We're advertising to attract people in, not scare them off. And that whole process should be an attracting, let's get to know each other. Here's an experience of what we're like, rather than something that's scary and long-winded and takes a long time. And, you know, there's nothing more off-putting to a candidate at first impressions is they've applied and they don't hear back for weeks. Or when they do hear back, it takes weeks to go through the process. You know, that's their first impressions, and it may well not be what they're looking for. It's a very fast-moving world that we live in now, and our expectations are pretty quick. I always say, you know what, put yourself in the candidate's shoes, because that's the great way for you to go, what would I expect as a candidate? What experience do I want? And then throughout the process, you know, in terms of it being a two-way street, you know, that the selection process itself isn't all about what we need and do you fit the bill. You know, it really does need to be, what do you need? Let's learn about you, you know, and how can we meet you in terms of your needs and what's important to you, so that I can tailor and share with you the great things that we do as a company that actually meets your needs. Because of course candidates' needs are also different. We can't assume they're all the same. We can't assume everybody just wants a bigger salary increase, although many do. We need to actually find out what is important, what their goals are, what their personal goals are, and then of course throughout the process we can make sure that we're speaking to those goals and meeting to them. And I'm not going to talk about induction training, etc., because I think someone else will talk about that. Onboarding is one of those topics, but that's first impressions too, because if you're not all organised for your candidates in that first day and that first week, well, their first impressions are going to be not quite as good as they could be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. And what you said, you know, talking to candidates about what it is that they need and what it is that they are looking for in their workplace experience is so important, and brings me to the next question about what are the conversations we are not having that we should be having during the recruitment process, because I think that we still are stuck in that traditional loop of talking about the salary, the benefits, and so on. But we know from candidates that there are other factors that are so important to them that candidates themselves don't bring up and wish the organisation brought up in the talk and in the interview process. Can you share some of the feedback from candidates you have?
Yes, absolutely. And look, your salary is there, and it still does come out relatively high for many, but not all. You know, it really absolutely isn't for all, and it can often be assumed. So I think, you know what, you really need to be asking the right questions so that you can understand. So your conversations do need to be turned on what's important to them, as I just said. You know, for example, some of the things that are really important to people are, you know, environment and sustainability. That's absolutely critical. And particularly the younger generation coming through, they want to work for good companies that do good. They want to work for social enterprises. And at Beaumont People, we're very much involved in the charity sector, and we have a lot of candidates that just want to go and work for the charity sector. They want to do some good. That's really important to them. It's not salary, and the salary might not be what they're used to on the commercial market, but that's what's important to them. And you only know that by actually asking the right questions. And for example, some of the other things you just referred to earlier is well-being, you know, what an organisation does to support their well-being, the all-rounded well-being of their workers. You know, do they offer extra leave, a 4-day week like we do? Do they offer a EAP program? And, you know, there's lots of different things that different organisations do, but how visible is that? How much is it being spoken at? How much is it shared? And are we actually asking the candidates that we're talking to how important that is and what's important to them? And of course, there are other things. A career progression. I was actually just reading a report that I pulled off the internet yesterday. And one of the things that was really, really high on there was team, the people that they work with. So what are we doing in our recruitment and selection process to give people a better understanding of who the team are, who they're working with? Management's really high on the list too. Who are they working for? What's their style? And so how do we involve those throughout the recruitment and selection process to really bring people into the organisation and just give them a much clearer picture of what is to offer? And then when we do that, we won't get stuck on the salary conversation, of course, at the end, because we'll be clear about what really is important and we can meet those needs effectively. So there's lots of others I could talk about. Obviously, flexibility is huge at the moment. That's very high up there. You know, what are organisations' policies in regards to flexibility? And one thing that we show at Beaumont People is what our company strategy is. You know, what are we actually here for? What are we going to try and achieve in the next year or two? And do you want to be part of that? And how would your role fit into, you know, the overall bigger picture business strategy? So those are some of the conversations that you can be having. And I do like to add that recruitment is not a 30-minute to a 1-hour interview and then it's done. You know, take your time over a short period of time, but to make time to do it right and make time to give candidates time to get it right. Just don't let it go on for weeks. Just make sure that you speak to them and give them enough time to really get to know each other well. And then I think you will attract and secure the best people for your organisation.
Yeah, really great points. Thank you, Nikki. Really, the key for me out of that is use the interview as an opportunity to get to know the candidate. Ask them questions about their life, their lifestyle, how they like to work, how they like to learn, and they will give you enough cues for you to then be able to highlight elements that are going to be important to them that you offer. You know, the amount of learning and development that your organisation invests in people, the well-being support. We know that mental health support is no longer a perk for organisations. It most definitely needs to be a standard feature. But we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the great sustainable work that we are doing. We know that that is what attracts the younger generation of employees that definitely want to make sure that the companies they are working for are sustainable and conscious of leaving behind a much better world. And also, well, my last thought just escaped to my mind. But you know, in general, helping individuals know before they even start a role with your organisation, the vital role they will be playing in helping the organisation achieve its goals. We know that that's one of the main reasons people leave organisations. They have not been given an opportunity to understand the role that they play, that they are important, that they have the skills and resources to bring the company that is required for their success. And it's a great opportunity to start that conversation from the start. Thank you so much, Nikki.
You're welcome.
So I've got a couple of numbers to share with you before we talk to our panel of best workplaces and some of the great onboarding programs that they have in place. So as we know, in what we just covered with Nikki, there is currently a 3.4% unemployment rate in Australia. We have roughly 470,000 roles, so 1 role per person. So how are the best organisations getting an average of 39 applicants per role? Their average attrition rates are only 14.5%, whereas the average in Australia at the moment is about 35%, and that's definitely a conservative figure, I would call it. But amongst the 40 best workplaces, they created 2,383 new roles. So not roles that they were refilling, but new roles in their organisations. These companies are growing. They increased their headcount by 17% over the last 12 months. And, you know, having a great talent pool of people to bring into the organisation definitely plays a role in that. It helps people remain at the organisation for a longer period of time. And that all starts with onboarding and welcoming people into the organisation and how you go through the interview process. So I would like to welcome to the chat Alice Hanna from Kapitol Group, Jodette Cleary from Hipages Group, and Nikki Lorenz from AC3. Hopefully everyone's audio will be working. Jodette, I can see you are muted. Maybe that will help us. For some reason, we just had a slight audio issue there. Can we hear you? Unfortunately, not yet. That's a shame. Okay, maybe I can answer some of the questions for you. I've worked with you for a long time. I know a lot of things about Hipages Group. But my first question is, and I'll start with Nadia. What's a typical interview process and selection process? What does that look like at AC3?
Yeah. So yeah, firstly, thank you for having me. I'll start this one off, and I think Nikki has already given a lot of really good tips and things that I can only agree that they're really important, taking that time and really getting to know the candidate. So at AC3, we make a big point around the fact that it's not just the technical expertise that we're looking for, but also who is this person, what are they motivated by, and what do they really need to succeed? Because it's our part then to make sure that if we say, hey, you've asked for X, Y, and Z, we need to support you to do that, because that is then our part of the deal. The other point that is really important to us at AC3 as well is that transparency piece that Nikki also mentioned, in terms of having a really good ad out there and having your position description structured in a way that allows the candidate to really understand what the role is like, but also what the company is like. So we have our company values, our ways of being as part of that position description, as well as on our ads. And we also understand that it's a two-way process. So while we are interviewing candidates, they interview us just as much. So really advertising what we do, what our culture is like, is just as important as asking the right questions.
Absolutely. And Alice at Kapitol Group, can you share a little bit about that process with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me as well. So we're a very value-based organisation, so we like to make sure that people that are joining us align to our values and that we are able to provide an environment to them where they can thrive and be authentic. And authenticity is something that we really, really focus on in all our attraction strategies. We've got a great marketing team who can make some very schmick marketing collateral, but we really like to put our people and our values front and centre and ask questions around that. So we'll ask questions like, who inspires you? And that will tell us what somebody truly values, because that's what they look up to in other people. So that's got not necessarily anything to do with the job, but we really dig into questions like that to make sure that they will live and breathe our values, because if everybody's living and breathing our values, we'll be a great place to work. So we certainly do a lot of that. We also, as I said, make sure everything's authentic. So we're not going to make anything look better than it really is. We're not going to make promises we can't keep, because then you won't retain people. So we've done a lot of work on working out what people in our industry truly want. And in construction, that's work-life balance, which I know is very common, but most of you will be horrified to know that in construction, most people work 60 to 80 hours a week across 6 to 7 days, and that's just construction, which we call BS on, pardon my language. So we've really worked on flexibility, getting work hours right down, and we've had so many of our staff say things like, it's changed my life. I couldn't watch my kids play footy on the weekend. I haven't watched my kid play footy for 3 years. And then we actually get that out through word of mouth. So that makes people realise, well, it must be true because people are saying it. I've even had some of our interviewers saying they pull out our monthly hours reporting and tracking to show candidates, hey, it's not lip service. We know every company says they've got good work-life balance, but here's the hours our actual current people did in the last month. And that brings it to life. So, a lot of construction candidates will say, yeah, you've got good hours, you don't work 6 days a week, sure, I've heard it before. And we can actually say, well, here's the data and here's some of our people telling you that it's actually true here. So for us, it's all authenticity and values. Yes, we need to know if somebody can do the job, of course, but as I think somewhere between 40 and 50% of our candidates come referred, we kind of already know they can do the job because somebody said to us, this person's great. So it's far less about do they know the compliance codes and how to build the thing, and far more about the approach they'll take and whether what we have to offer is something that excites and inspires them.
Being honest in interviews definitely goes a long way. I know we all love to present a rosy picture of our, absolutely perfect organisations, but we all know that's not realistic. And it's so important to be honest up front. I think it really builds that relationship about being authentic. Because we're having a bit of trouble hearing from Jodette, I will share with you some of the things that hipages does. So when there is a role open at hipages, there are several people who take part in the interview process. There is a people and culture representative, there is a hiring manager, at least one person from the team. And managers do go through a boot camp prior to going to interviews so that they, brush up on their interview skills and so on prior to meeting people. Now, after the interview, everyone who was involved in the process talks about the candidate, and everyone has to agree on a candidate before they will be put through to the next stage or hired, because it's really important at hipages to maintain a culture. And something that Nadia and Alice haven't mentioned, but I know that their organisations do, as hipages does, is they're incredibly respectful to everyone who has gone through the interview process and taken the time to apply for a role and meet with them. And so they actually ensure to give feedback to everyone who hasn't, been taken through the next stage of being hired, to thank them for their time, to give them feedback, and to keep them in the community, because they might be perfect for the next role that you do have, or the next time you have an opportunity in your organisation. It's really a great opportunity to build a relationship with individuals. So Alice, for the second question, I will start with you to tell us a little bit about what happens at Kapitol when you do onboard employees into the organisation. How do you ensure that they are having a great experience from day one? Because we like to think people arrive at their job on the first day 100% engaged, but we can very quickly deteriorate that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so important to us. We spend a lot of time on onboarding, and for us, onboarding is from the day somebody applies for the role up to 6 months after they've been with us. So that could potentially be an 8 or 9 month period that we consider onboarding. So look, a lot of people are not sure what to expect on their first day. So we send a lovely pack to people with information as simple as, hey, what to wear, through to this is what's going to happen to you in your first month. So they come with a little bit of comfort and not so many unknowns, especially for our graduates who may never have worked in an office environment or a site environment before. We have a very high touch onboarding process where we make sure that managers actually have times booked in their calendars to meet with new starters. I'm horrified by friends and peers telling me that they start new jobs and they don't meet their manager for 3 days. So we do really simple things like actually book time in the first few weeks and months in managers' calendars to set clear expectations, take them out for morning tea, give them feedback. My team do 2 in-depth chats with people at the 1 month and the 6 month mark. So we send them an online survey asking for their feedback on the recruitment and onboarding process in the first month, and then in the 6 month mark asking for feedback on, training and development, the setting of expectations, how they're settling in the culture. So those chats are not, here's how you're performing, it's how are you finding the culture? Do you have everything you need? What further training and development can we give you? What further support can we give you? How can we improve our culture? So really in that first 6 months, they've met with their managers several times. They've had some social engagements with their team. They've met with the people and culture team a couple of times. They would have already gone through the performance appraisal process, which we do quarterly. So it's a very high touch process, really. Our onboarding checklist, I think, has something like 86 items on it between my team, learning and development, and the manager. And that makes sure that we have a really consistent process where the person really gets to understand the role, the expectations of behaviour and performance, as well as has had a chance to experience everything that our culture can offer. So at that 6 month mark, we all know, is this for us? Are you for us? So we take it really, really seriously. I get very angry with my managers when they're not doing those touch points throughout the process, because we know how important it is to people. So it's very thorough, it's very consistent, it's very manual. It's not whistles and fireworks. There's nothing overly innovative I can tell you that we do, other than we are very thorough, we're very consistent, and they're regular two-way feedback points to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, it's so important to actually have an induction process that lasts quite a few months. That first day and the first week are so vital, but it really takes us about 90 days to make a decision on a new environment. And, you know, it can take up to 6 months to decide whether you like the organisation or not, and vice versa, for us to decide whether this candidate is truly for the organisation or not. Nadia, would you mind sharing a little bit about what happens at AC3?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with Alice that I think that shifting from our mindset of starting at day one towards getting ahead of day one can really add a lot of value to a new starter's onboarding experience. We have to really be proactive already before they step their foot into the office on their first day. And especially in this world that's continuously becoming faster, more complex, and distance as well due to remote work, we have found that this personal touch is really important. So that email your manager sends you the week before you start, or the little text message that you get on the day, you know, as you walk to your first day when you're quite nervous and it's quite anxious, that really adds a lot of value. So similar to what Alice described, we have a lot of checkpoints throughout that whole process where we are sending little cookies with a card, you know, ahead of time to say, hey, we're really looking forward to have you as part of the team and as part of AC3. There's different checkpoints between the hiring manager, people and culture as well. So there's a lot of checkpoints on the way to day one already. And then once you start, we have found it's really important to build that connection also with people outside your team and in the organization, especially with that remote work. So for example, we have a CEO lunch where our CEO takes all the new starters for a lunch for them to get to know each other, to kind of bond, because they don't all start on the same day, but maybe on the same month. But also have that really unique opportunity to ask the CEO all sorts of things that, you know, you've been wondering about. And then we do regular fireside chats where our CEO kind of has a fireside chat with one of our senior leaders or someone who's been in the business for a long time. And it goes between some personal questions like, you know, what's your favorite food, all the way to, so what does your team actually do and how do you add value to the company and to our customer? And then those recordings and having those kind of webinars is really that personal feeling that people value.
Absolutely. And Nadia, one of my favorite things I read about AC3 is how you guys actually found a new hire through a Reddit blog.
Yep.
You know, you have to be on the lookout everywhere, right?
Yeah, that was one of our more progressive hiring managers who, he came to me one day and he said, hey, I find this really great graduate on Reddit in this whatever technology group it was. And he goes, so what do we do? How do we get him on board? And yeah, we made it happen then.
Yeah. Now we've tried again to reconnect to Jodette. Can you try speaking and see if we can hear you? Still nothing. Oh, you know, it was so funny because when Jodette joined, we could hear her and all of a sudden her audio went out. So Jodette, I'll do my best to cover hipages. So one of the great things about hipages is they are so authentic with the end product that they deliver, which is a connection point between individuals and tradies. And so the hipages office very much looks like a house. The lobby looks like the most beautiful display home you have ever walked into. And everything is very much branded from the first interaction an employee has with the organisation. You know, on the first day, they receive a toolkit, which is filled with branded goodies for the organisation to make them feel like they are part of the team. One of the great things hipages does is they implement a buddy system in the office. So you have your point of contact person to show you around. This is your person to ask all the questions. You know, we go through induction programs and learning and checklists and so on, but the chances are we tend to forget. We're inundated with information on that first day. You sometimes forget where things are, where to find them, and that's the role of your buddy to help you out and find all those things. There is at the next town hall meeting, the newbies are welcomed into the organisation by a senior leader. And just like the lunches with the CEOs that happen with Kapitol and AC3, it's so important to create an opportunity to build a relationship with senior leadership and make them visible to new starters into the organisation, because this strengthens that messaging that happens throughout the organisation, the visibility of senior leadership, and all the employees' view around the senior leadership dictating the pace of the organisation, and building a relationship where you don't feel intimidated to reach out to senior leadership if you wish to speak to them. The induction process at hipages is a comprehensive 90-day program that happens, and everyone receives a booklet on their first day that outlines the 90 days, the certain things that will happen at each point of that, and of course the appraisal process at the end of that 90 days. So this brings me to the end of all the questions I had for the panelists, but I'm sure some of the attendees have some questions as well, and I'd like to open up the floor to Q&A. If somebody would like to ask a question, you can put it in the chat, or you can do the little reaction of the hand up, and we will enable your microphone and your screen to ask your question. I always find people are a lot shyer on webinars to ask a question rather than in the room. I will ask a question. I'll start it off. So with the Circle Back program, of when you go back to candidates to let them know why they weren't successful this time around, I think one of the detractors from going through that might be the thought that it is quite a time-consuming process. Is there a format you follow to make this quite a structured process?
Yeah, look, I mean, our recruiter firstly has a system to track it so nobody slips through the cracks. Also, that balance of being honest with the feedback you can give. Also, I think it's really important to put ourselves in their shoes and think what it's like to apply for a job or interview and never hear back. And as attraction's so hard at the moment, we've actually had 2 people this year that we've said thanks but no thanks to, who have then referred other people to us because they enjoyed the recruitment process so much. And 2 people doesn't sound like much, but we all know how hard recruitment is and how expensive recruiters are. That could have saved us tens of thousands of dollars on recruiter fees. And they came through people we said no to, which I thought was really good. Credit to my talent acquisition manager, who obviously gave them such a good process, including the way he said no, that they were willing to refer other people through to us. So that's not really a how to do comment. That's really more a comment on it's so important just to treat people with that respect. You never know if they'll become a client or someone at a competitor or refer candidates to you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's all about building that relationship and having more clarity maybe around what they need to do to be the right candidate next time. Or also you might draw back on them for a role that they are more suitable for when the time comes.
I also think in terms of those internal candidates, because I know someone mentioned, sometimes it's referrals, but it's also internal candidates. I always work with the hiring manager then on actually making a plan for next time. You give them the feedback, of course, why they weren't successful this time, but now they very clearly expressed an interest of where they want to go in the future. So straight away with your feedback, you can come up with a plan to work with them to get them there when a new opportunity comes up. And I think that also gives back a lot of value in terms of, look, you're not there where we need you right now, but we are willing to invest and work with you to get you there in the near future.
Yeah, you make a really great point, Nadia. It's such a great opportunity to start a conversation around career planning. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily come out in in the formal learning and development chats we have, but it's always good to see where people's minds are at and what has drawn their interest in where they want to grow. We do have one question in the chat. Could anyone share what they do to provide a great candidate experience?
Yeah, happy to jump in there. So look, I think we're all doing the basics of making it a smooth application process in terms of the online forms and the process. And we're probably all communicating regularly and not keeping people hanging. So I won't cover the basics. I think, as I said before, it's all about authenticity and really sharing the company journey and inspiring them. We want candidates to actually leave excited and think, this is not just a job for me, this is the next 5 or 10 years for me. So we're very open with telling people where the company's going, where we think someone like them can fit into it. We have big plans. We've got giant, Jim Collins would call them big, hairy, audacious goals, or Dan Pink, sorry, would call them big, hairy, audacious goals. So we like to talk about that to get people really excited. They're all interviewing with 4 or 5 other companies that are probably all offering similar salaries and similar roles and similar learning and development. So I think you really have to differentiate yourself. And we do that by being really authentic, being really honest, sharing as much as we can, also sharing who we are as people. So as somebody, I think it was you, Zrinka, said before, it's not us interviewing them now, it's definitely two-way. And for us, it's a conversation, not an interview. We don't even like to call it an interview process. It's a conversation to see if there's fit for now and for the future. So yeah, I mean, do all the hygiene things well, get back to people, do all of that, make it a smooth process, don't keep them hanging, but absolutely get them excited. Differentiate yourself from your competitors, not just with perks. Everyone does the same perks these days, pay for gym memberships and do this and do that. For me, it's all about that authenticity and excitement around the vision and the values.
Yeah, absolutely right. I was going to actually mention that your career page on your website is so important. It is one of the first places people will look for if they are considering you as an employer. You need to clearly articulate your organization's culture, your values, what a day in the life looks like. Showcase your people. Don't use stock images. You have great employees and put them front and center as the ambassadors for your organization. It's usually one of the first places people go at to get to know your organization before they even meet you. And as you just said, Alice, it is very much a conversation of an organization and an individual meeting rather than it being a one-way interview process. Something that we forgot to mention is that you also need to be very careful with who you have on the hiring panel. What can sometimes happen is we talk about how diverse organizations are and try to really highlight that to candidates. You need to make sure that your interview panel is also going to display that and be diverse and represent who your organization is and act in the ways of your organization's values and really put the best foot forward. So
can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we need to be really flexible as well. I don't think we're in the day and age now where you can force people to come in for a face-to-face in the CBD. I think we need to look at flexibility. I mean, we're lucky we're a distributed network of construction sites and we can interview on site so people can interview close to home, see the real life, what a day in the life looks like. But as candidates are interviewing with 4 or 5 different companies at a time, don't make them take days off work to drive long ways into your head office. Find ways to be flexible for at least a few steps of the interview process, excuse me, to make it easy for them.
Excellent point. Thank you for adding that. Since there are no questions, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the panel today and for joining our discussion about how the best are attracting and retaining people. We have a few more webinars lined up for the early start of next year before the 2023 Best Places to Work list comes out February. We're talking about organisational alignment and inspiration at the best organisations. In March, we are going to be talking about diversity, inclusion, at belonging and what that looks like at the best organisations. And in May, we're going to be getting ready for the end of financial year and talking about how the best organisations celebrate their success. There was one last question. May we get a copy of the slide deck, please? You absolutely will. And this is being recorded and it will be up on our YouTube channel. You can definitely rewatch it. You can also take part in the Best Places to Work study and be part of the conversation next year. The registrations are open until May next year. Thank you again so much, Nikki, Alice, Nadia, and Jodette. Thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone, thank you for giving up your hour, and we hope to see you again in the new year. Thank you.